Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight, Monday, March 18th, for our City Council meeting. We will now look to call this meeting to order. Excuse me, Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Schultz.
Here.
Latta.
Here.
Cruz.
Here.
Paulbaker.
Here.
Ganfield.
Here.
Chrisman.
Here.
Dunn. Here. All members present, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And if willing and able, could you please stand to join for Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. So look for a motion to approve the minutes of the regular City Council meeting.
Second.
Moved and seconded. And voice vote, all those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Any agenda revisions, Madam Clerk?
I have no agenda revisions, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. We'll move on to public forums. So speakers will have one opportunity to speak for up to 5 minutes on topics relevant to city business. Is there anyone here from the public that would wish to speak tonight? Just name and city, please.
Mayor, Council, Rich Kurtenbach. I'm actually reside in Waterloo, and I'm here tonight to let you know of a few things I'm looking in my future here in the next several months. I've been a labor leader with the IBW for over 27 years, and in that process, I've worked with many folks in trying to build better public policy and governments. Tonight, I'm making rounds to all the different cities in Blackhawk County to let them know I'm looking at running for, or I am running for, Blackhawk County as supervisor. Part of my goal is in running for supervisor.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
So any talk about campaign using this podium for campaign purposes is not allowed?
Okay, so it's not allowed. So
Thank you.
thank you, Richie.
Sorry.
All right, anyone else for public comment, please?
Can I hand some flyers out?
Council's all right with that?
Yep.
Yes.
Thanks.
Director Birdie, this is usually your job.
Thank you, sir. Getting a night off.
Coupon in here.
Thank you.
All right, my name is Chad Walsh. I reside here in Cedar Falls. I own a property at 1004 Main Street in Cedar Falls. That was part of the street reconstruction project last year. We've owned the property for roughly 7 years, and we were anticipating this project with enthusiasm, excited for the utilities to be separated, a new road to be done, all the great things that come with it. Well, we are, not even a year after the street recon, and I have sewer problems already. So on the first page, the top photo in the left corner kind of shows the layout of the property and how the sewer is wide off the neighbor's sewer and it goes to my property, then the neighboring property to the east. The second and third photo are prints of the city sewer project stating that there's supposed to be 2 separate sewers installed there. And the third is the SUDA's plumbing code stating the 1 to 5% fall is required on a 6-inch pipe. Well, last Monday I stopped at my property. The basement had multiple occasions of sewer backing up into the basement. So I stopped Austin, the city inspector for the project, and asked if this was my problem or the city's problem, and he quickly informed me that it's my problem until I prove it's the city's fault. So I called my plumber. I got a cable coming. I got a camera coming. We cameraed the sewer. We saw minor root intrusion on my end of the old sewer. As we continued down through the Y of the neighboring property and into the sewer main, we found standing water just before where the sewer dumps into the sewer main. And you can see those on the next photo, on the next page. On the first top left is at 96 foot is where the sewer drops into the main. The second photo is the camera underwater. The third photo is showing the massive amount of buildup in the sewer pipe. And the fourth one is pulling back through the Y for the neighboring property. I informed Austin and the city of Cedar Falls of the issue, and on Tuesday, Dave Smith with Dave Schmidt Construction's crew came out and cameraed the line. I was informed that they see nothing wrong with the sewer on the city's end, and it is all on my responsibility. So my plumber jokingly said, I'll call the plumber inspector and get a permit to tie into the neighboring property, which he knew he couldn't do. So now I'm looking at possibly tapping into a new sewer line on a brand new street, according to the contractor, was estimated at over $100,000. Or I can replace my sewer and tap into the neighbor's property, which has been denied for many other citizens, but maybe a variance for me, but I still have a belly in a sewer service that I have to deal with. So I guess my question and concerns are that I was told from the city of Cedar Falls that a belly in the pipe is when the sewer is more than half full. I've talked to plumbing contractors, I've talked to city inspectors for plumbers, and everybody agreed that no sewer should have any standing water at all. That is not acceptable. So why do we hold our developers, contractors, and investors at a higher standard than we hold our own city contractors? Why can I get a variance for my sewer project when others in the city cannot? It sounds like every single property in that project from 6th Street to University Ave all had sewer taps accounting for every single property except for these three. And I'm curious on how that got missed. So I just want to understand why my property is the exception and how this can actually be fixed correctly and not have issues forever. Thank you.
Thank you, Chad. Anyone else for public comment, please? Just name and city, please.
My name is Larry Stummy, and I live at 1008 Lois Lane in Waterloo. Yes, Dr. Blackwell and I are back again. And we'll continue to come back because the problems that we're concerned about have not gone away. Both of us are ordained Christian pastors. Both of us have been long involved in the civil rights movement. And we were shaken and stunned in a way of something we should have known, should have been aware of, that pointed us, even reminded us of the reality of the situation of blacks in our community and in the country and in the world. In 2018 came out the 24/7 Wall Street report saying that Waterloo Cedar Falls was the worst place for blacks to live in the country based on criteria that was determined to be scientific. In response to that, Waterloo City Council did something. In 21, they hired a consultant to respond. And at that time, they developed what was called the Waterloo 2030 Community Vision Plan. And this plan was to respond to the problems that were pointed out in that 24/7 report. This problem, I don't understand why they didn't come to you, because this was the 24/7 was Waterloo Cedar Falls. Why did they think they were the only ones that should be answering and dealing with this problem? This was a community problem, and one that should have involved even the whole county. And we've been pushing since that time to encourage this plan that they developed, that this Waterloo 2030 Community Vision Plan was a good plan. And it was developed in 21, and it had a list of things that were going to be happening. They were going to hire a director for $90,000 to $150,000 annual salary. We're going to have $10 million to start working. They were going to bring together all the financial resources and the governmental resources, and it looks like that's where it's at. But I think it's not too late, because the problems are still there. The problems are still there, and it's still a Waterloo-Cedar Falls problem. And I hope that there can be more communication, more working together, and more vision planning for the whole community, that we realize that we are one, not separate little entities, that we each have our own personal problems with our own problems of our entities, our streets, and things like that. But the basic thing, we are a unity in a community that shares industry and shares schools and shares people. So that's why we're here, to continue to push you to work with Waterloo and the supervisors, the county supervisors, to get a handle. The problems of our community are not so great, and our resources are enough to really make a dent in some of these problems. And that's why why we've come to you, and that's why we're going to keep coming to you until we see some more positive cooperation and work to deal seriously what's happening. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Stummy. Anyone else for public comment? Just name and city, please.
Michael Blackwell, Cedar Falls. The gravity of the situation of blacks in the Cedar Valley seems to be given merely passive consideration. Perhaps the reason for the enervated attention to the crisis is because we are accustomed to inaction and to the lethargy in redressing the inveterate and countless racial disparities primarily generated by the inertia of century-long institutional discrimination. Another factor is that we pay little attention to the individuals and groups complaining about legitimate issues because there's a history of doing nothing about them without reprisals. So those in power or with authority simply and deliberately tune out the concerns and feel no compulsion whatsoever to attend to them with presumed impunity. Certainly there must be among you individuals who are not only frustrated over the lack of effective improvement in the quality of life of blacks here, but also disgusted in the lack of substantive response to the cries for justice repeatedly emanating from those affected by the disease of bureaucratic racism. I encourage you to intensify and broaden the necessary nitty-gritty work to mitigate and undo the multiple and cumulative ways in which systemic racism disinherits, straitjackets, and displaces blacks from experiencing the fullness of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness in this, ironically, the most affluent democracy in the world. Such endeavors should be a conscious, daily task of the city's staff and leadership. Given the egregious length of time, these patterns of injustice have been lock-stitched into the fabric of our society. And the community should be integrally involved and kept current with the plans and progress to augment and ameliorate the quality of life of blacks in the Cedar Valley. And I realize that the racial disparities are so numerous that it's hard really to figure out what to do. But we need to make the attempt, a serious, conscious, and diligent effort to do so. And as long as we listen to it and say nice platitudes about what we would like to do and what we vision to do, and nothing follows through, we are really shortchanging the people not only the black people in the Cedar Valley, but also everyone in the Cedar Valley. And if we help to improve the quality of life of blacks in the Cedar Valley, we help the whole community. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Blackwell. If anyone else for public forum? Name and city, please.
Good evening, folks. My name is Bob Manning. I live in Cedar Falls, Iowa, a great town to live in. I was excited to hear that the Committee of the Whole passed the looking further into the conflict of interest statement that's come up recently. And thank you for some of your leadership on that. I've read the conduct of meetings that's available and have highlighted some areas in here that I think should be re-brought to the attention, and perhaps all of you are familiar with this. But one of them, 4.6, again, under the conduct of meetings and Cedar Council, City Council meeting procedures, it says, speaking on questions restricted, no member shall speak more than twice on one question before the council without leave of the council, no more than once in any case until every member choosing to speak shall have spoken. I think there's been some abuse of that in the past. I'm excited to hear that the College Hill Vision Plan is coming forward, and we'll see that on the council agenda in the future. Certainly I still remember the horrors of the last city council lobbying and preventing that from moving forward. And I think that was a serious injustice by the previous council, and so I'm glad this council is looking forward to moving forward on that. 4.9 says the order required while others are speaking. While a member is speaking, no other member shall hold private discourse or interrupt except as allowed on the point of order. 4.11 says under discussion, a member shall speak only after being recognized by the presiding officer. A member recognized for a specific person shall limit remarks to that person, to that purpose. A member, after being recognized, shall not be interrupted except by the presiding officer to enforce these rules. Good to review these things for all of us. Certainly as a citizens, we want to know more about the procedure. Lastly, the limit on remarks. Each member shall limit remarks to a reasonable length. That's a tough one, and a tough one to enforce, perhaps. But one of our January meetings was a 90-minute meeting. There was 25 minutes involved with public speaking or the public presentation, leaving 65 minutes for the council to conduct business. And 25 minutes of that were spent by one person talking several times about all kinds of subjects. And for them to dominate, I call it lobbying, for a third of the time available to the rest of the council people is inappropriate. There's the conflict of College Hill, the conflict of interest, and the College Hill Vision Plan coming up soon will be a challenge perhaps to this council person to let others speak on this in behalf of their thinking. Whether a person is brand new to the council or is seasoned veteran or has been here too long, they should respect the right of the others to have a chance to speak their mind and share their thoughts. And too much of that lobbying has been done in the past, and I'm excited to see the new council people that are so encouraged by the city of Cedar Falls and where we're going, that they're going to want to see that everybody gets a shake in this. And I hope that's the case when the College Hill plan comes forward to the council. I wanted to lay that out ahead of time so that we're aware that that's coming up and that there's been one individual who's dominated that conversation in the past. And I'm sorry, Mr. Cruz, to see you have done that. I hope the rest of the council.
Bob, please keep your comments directed toward me.
Okay. I'm sorry that Mr. Cruz has done that in the past, and I hope that he'll abide by the regulations that you all have adopted on how to conduct himself at a meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Any other public comments for tonight? Name and city, please.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Larry Wessels, 4529 Briarwood, Cedar Falls. I'm here tonight because it seems like over the past year, every time I happen to tune in to a council meeting, I see groups of people and individuals coming up here talking about how terrible a place Cedar Falls is, how unsafe it is. And I see something totally different, and I feel I need to just come forward and say so. I'm retired from law enforcement and was involved in that for over 30 years. And during my tenure in law enforcement, I guess you could say I had the opportunity to be involved in cases not only in this area but throughout the state and surrounding states. And I have definitely seen the best and I've seen the worst. And from my experiences, I'm damn proud to say that I live in Cedar Falls. Cedar Falls is a safe community. Cedar Falls is a welcoming community. And people talk about cooperating and cooperation. Well, this is what I see. I see every week people in this community packing up their tools, donating their time, hours and hours of volunteer time going over building houses for Habitat for Humanity. It's not just a one-time deal. It happens every week. And there are a large number of people that do that. What I see is churches, Orchard Hill Church, members of that church, Nazareth Lutheran Church, people that donate thousands of dollars every year to help underprivileged people buy Christmas presents during the Christmas time. Those are people from Cedar Falls. I watched one meeting several months ago where a group of people were in, and there was they were quite angry at the city of Cedar Falls, and they stood up and said how unsafe it was and that they were scared to walk the streets. And there was an elderly lady that got up and talked. And we have disagreements. We may not always we don't have to accept everyone's certain lifestyles, or we may disagree with those lifestyles. But what I saw after that meeting was this lady had an issue with the city of Cedar Falls. Her property was going to be condemned. And what I saw was people from this community that disagreed with her and her lifestyle, went to her house, cleaned out that house, put their health in jeopardy to help that lady. Nothing was said, there was no argument, there was nothing said about what her beliefs were, what our beliefs were. We just went and helped. That's what I see in Cedar Falls, and I'm damn proud to say I'm a member of this city. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Do we have anybody else for public comment tonight? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to staff updates. Do we have any staff updates? Jen, I believe?
Yes, I think Jen's going to give us an update on our upcoming career fair.
I know we mentioned this last time, but since it's this Saturday, we thought we'd just do a reminder again tonight that Cedar Falls is hosting a career fair this Saturday from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the Public Works Complex, 2200 Technology Parkway. The event will feature part-time, full-time, seasonal positions. We'll have various departments there who have openings. The Public Works, the Rec, Public Safety. We're also going to have some information there about boards and commissions. So if anybody's interested in maybe a board or commission, they can stop by and get some information on that. Career fair is open to anyone and it's free. My understanding is there's going to be some refreshments there. So feel free to stop out this Saturday, or if you're interested, visit cedarfalls.com/jobs to see what openings there are at the city.
Thank you, Jen. So moving on to special order of business, we have item number 2, public hearing to consider entering into an agreement for private development and to consider conveyance of city-owned real estate to Blackhawk Properties LLC. Do we have a motion to receive and file proof of publication?
Second.
And seconded, requires a voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Madam Clerk, any written communications?
I have no written communications on file, Mr. Mayor.
And I believe we have staff comments from Shane Graham.
Thank you, Mayor. Staff's been working with representatives of Blackhawk Properties LLC for the past several months on this project, which will equate to the construction of a new 78,000 square foot industrial building in the new expansion area of the West Viking Road Industrial Park. This project will occur on Lot 11, which is a 7.5 acre lot located at the corner of Technology Parkway and Innovation Drive. If anyone's been out there, I was just out there last week driving around. We got 2 new buildings going on in that new expansion area of the industrial park, so this one would be the 3rd one. So yeah, from staff's perspective, we're real happy to see a lot of interest in that new area already. That area actually just became available for development over the summer, so we're not even 12 months in, and we're already seeing a lot of interest in that area. So for this project, again, looking at a 78,000 square foot industrial building with a valuation of a little over $6.2 million, with land total valuation of $6.8 million. For this project, they would do the project in 3 phases, with phase 1 being approximately 30,000 square feet in size. This first phase of the project would be for the new home of Rice Companies. Rice Companies is a construction company based out of Minnesota. They recently located in Cedar Falls and are leasing a small space right now in the Industrial and Technology Park. So they would like to build this facility for their new Cedar Falls home. And then the phase 2 and the phase 3 portions of this project would include 24,500 square foot additions, which would be industrial lease space. There'd be a number of single-use, single-tenants spaces. They could combine it into multiple tenant spaces, with each space having its own loading dock and overhead door. So they're excited to get that project started. For the phase 1, they would like to get this project started soon, this spring or summer, with completion in the next 12 to 18 months. For the incentives for this project, they would be donated the lot at no cost, the 7.5 acre lot. Again, for this project, this building is going to be centered in the middle of the building with employee and visitor parking on the east side and loading docks and things like that on the west side. In the agreement, we do have some timelines and phasing for when they have to start phase 2, phase 3, and there are clawbacks in the agreement if they happen to not move forward with those phases. So in addition to the land donation, we also offer the standard 5-year tax abatement that we typically offer for any projects with a building valuation of over $1.2 million. You can see in the memo, I've kind of shown what the anticipated taxes are based on the valuation of the building, and then what approximately those the abatement would look like based on that valuation. With that, once the project is done, we will send the tax abatement ordinance back through council, and then council will formally approve that tax abatement when the project is complete. So with that, staff and legal have been working on the development agreement. Has been approved and agreed to upon by both sides. Company representatives, I usually like to have someone here from the company side, but they are all in Dallas at a conference right now, so they do send their regards and that no one could be here tonight. So, and with that, I'll try to answer any questions.
Any questions from council?
Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to ask Chase, why are you not in Dallas yourself? I mean, it's warm.
You have to ask Ron that.
Next time, Ron.
Are you saying improve his budget for more travel expense?
We're not there yet.
Councilmember
Schultz.
I was about to call you Councilmember Gill.
I put it in
That's
the
not
subject
appropriate.
line. That's why you didn't get it. Little insight.
I don't read the subject
I know
lines.
you don't read the subject line. This is, I think, a great addition out there. I maybe a little bit off, and I haven't had a chance to talk to you outside of this, but is there still interest, or what's the interest in the North Industrial Park in comparison to like this area or the South? Is something holding us back in the north, or are you happy with what's going on out there?
It's quick for what it's worth, just council, since this isn't relevant to this item.
Yeah.
Do we want to have this conversation or different time?
I'd ask
I think
Gil to rethink it.
we'd prefer to maybe give an offline update.
Yeah,
We can give you an offline update. I think.
that'd be fine.
Okay. Any other questions from council? All right, thank you, Shane. Now look for any public comments on this item. All right, seeing none, then we will close the public hearing and look for a motion to approve a resolution approving and authorizing execution of an agreement for private development and a minimum assessment agreement, approving and authorizing execution of a deed without warranty, conveying certain city-owned real estate to Blackhawk Properties. Did you get the motion second?
I did.
All right, so we have motion second. Any council discussion? Seeing none, we'll look for a roll call vote.
My voting went away.
On the other tab.
Aye.
All members voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That motion does pass. So we'll move on to item number 3, public hearing on proposed amendments to Chapter 26, zoning of the Code of Ordinances relative to the city's floodplain regulations. We have a motion to receive and file proof of publication.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and second. And all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Madam Clerk, any written communications?
I have no written communications on file, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And then we have staff comments. Thank you, Tom.
Good evening, Council, Mayor. The purpose of these code amendments is part of the adoption of the new floodplain maps. As part of that process, FEMA through DNR review have specific language that needs to be included in our code of ordinances. And we have to have them in our ordinance to be able to participate in the NFIP, or the National Flood Insurance Program. If we do not adopt these, then we don't have flood insurance available for the community. So just leave it at that. We'll be looking at several sections. There's 9 sections that need to be reviewed and have some changes made. This presentation will just summarize what's in the memo that's in your packet. This started in 2019 when the maps were first presented by the DNR for review. In 2020, Cedar Falls did an appeal, which we submitted better data to the state for mapping the floodplains, and then that process was restarted. Now, these maps are county-wide, so as each community provides information, the maps will be updated, and it sort of makes it a little bit longer in the process. Cedar Falls submitted information on the university branch of Dry Run Creek, and then when the construction of the Green Hill Road extension was done. So that was our amendment. The final letter of map determination was for countywide adoption was set out in November of last year for an adoption date of May 8th of this year. In that time frame, the DNR reviewed our ordinance and provided us a list of revisions that were to be part of the review process. And then staff and DNR, because the city regulates to higher standards, we had to make sure that our language and their language didn't contradict, and they, I guess, were complementary to each other. The biggest section of amendments were to the definitions. We had some definitions that were in there that just needed to update, some language revisions, and then there were several new definitions that were included, such as the enclosed area before the lowest floor. And when you read through some of these definitions, it can be a little mind-blowing. Historic structures have certain criteria that they could be exempt from the requirements of having to meet the floodplain ordinance. And then there's special definition of routine maintenance for a house. If somebody needs to repair broken windows, that's not a flood issue. That's something that we can review. We still have to issue permits, but that's not something that has to go through the floodplain process. The next section, there were a lot of changes replacing the term buildings and structures with uses and development. I guess that's an update to the fact that sometimes uses of a property aren't always a building in the floodplain. And then there was a section where we updated put all the new firm panel numbers in there, and then also reflected the new adoption date of May 8th, 2024. Then another section that had a lot of amendments was the floodway fringe district, which is really the main area that we have purview over. The other two floodplain districts, DNR has part of that review. And so with these, we had reorganization of some of the subsections. There was additional language pertaining to subdivisions that are greater than 5 acres or 50 lots. And this is something that we've been reviewing previously through the subdivision control ordinance. FEMA wanted that included in this, this part of the zoning code. And then there's language requesting additional details for flood protection of new, substantially improved or substantially damaged structures. So it looks like a lot of information in there, but a lot of it is just clarifying things. There's no really new regulations that we have not been previously doing. Staff had reviewed a lot of these things and requested what some of these amendments were previously. And with that, I will be happy to answer any questions. Oh, the recommendation from Planning and Zoning, they recommend that you would approve the text amendment 24001.
All right. Thank you, Tom. Any questions from council?
Mr. Mayor,
Yep, Councilman Garfield.
just wanted to verify, where can we get those firm maps? I couldn't find them on a quick search to see the new panel maps.
They're
Those gonna be
available on
published?
FEMA's mapping site. We have the copies downstairs in planning office. You're welcome to stop by and look at those. We also have on the website the overlay for the new maps as well, and you can go through FEMA to get those.
Okay. The only other follow-on there, if I may, what kind of a notification goes out? I know we had a net increase in properties that would require flood insurance, should they have a mortgage, et cetera. Do we know, do we let them know, or does county?
That's through FEMA, and that was with the state when they held the meetings. Property owners were invited. They were notified that there would be some changes, so.
Perfect.
But they're happy. If people have questions, I welcome any phone calls.
Excellent, thank you.
Any other questions?
I got a bunch, but I'm going to stop by and talk to Tom in person.
Look at some maps.
Look at some maps and talk about Cedar City and some others.
Okay.
Anything else on council? All right, thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
In other words, we'll open up for public comment on this item. All right, seeing none, we will close the public hearing and look to pass, motion to pass an ordinance amending Chapter 26, zoning of the Code of Ordinances relative to the city's floodplain regulations, first consideration.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and seconded. Any council discussion? Seeing none, a roll call vote, please.
All members voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That motion does pass. So we'll now move on to the consent calendar. So the following items will be acted upon by a voice vote on a single motion without separate discussion unless someone from the council or public requests that a specific item be considered separately. Are there any requests for items on the consent calendar be considered separately from council?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
number 5, please.
Okay. And number 5, any others from council? And any from the public? All right, seeing none, we will look to approve items 4 through 8, excluding number 5. For a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and seconded. Any discussion? All right, and then voice vote, so all those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. And we'll look to number 5. Item number 5 is receive and file the following resignation of members from boards and commissions for Jennifer Onugbo for the Human Rights Commission. Councilman Latha?
We need a motion.
Need a motion.
Oh, excuse me. Motion to approve?
So moved.
So moved.
And seconded. All right, open for discussion.
Mr. Mayor, I'm just curious, seems as though we've had a number of resignations just recently from our HRC. How many vacant seats do we have presently?
So we have 4 vacant seats presently, 3 of which have been in this year so far.
And I'm just curious, are we looking at any commonalities or root causes as it relates to those resignations?
And I have had conversations with a few of those who provided their exit interview, and Leather, there are some concerns there that I've looked at. Won't address those here publicly tonight, but there are some concerns that I'm looking into.
Just want to make sure you're looking at it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other council questions, comments? right, so motion and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. All right, resolution calendar. So the following items will be acted upon by roll call vote on a single motion without separate discussion, unless someone from the council or public requests a specific item be considered separately. Are there any requests for items in the resolution calendar to be considered separately from council?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
18 and 19.
19. Any others? All right, and then any from the public? All right, seeing none, we'll look for a motion to approve items 9 through 21, excluding 18 and 19.
Second.
Motion and seconded. And any discussion? It requires a roll call vote, please.
All members voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That motion passes. We'll now pull number 18. It's a resolution receiving and filing and approving and accepting the bid of Aspro Incorporated in the amount of $22,036.30, being the only bid received for the 2024 street restoration project. Motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
And seconded. Open for discussion. Councilman Ganfield.
Sure, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to point this one out, a couple of different things that stuck out to me here. I'm not looking to look a gift horse in the mouth. This being the only bid received, it came in substantially lower than our engineering estimate, and it was about 34.5% lower than our estimate. So it looks like prices are starting to come drastically down. So I'm appreciative of that.
Agreed.
Good news.
Any other discussion? Question? All right, and then we need a roll call vote, please.
All members voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. It is nice when things come in under budget. So look, number 19, resolution receiving and filing the bids and approving and accepting the low bid of Dave Schmidt Construction Company in the amount of $3,606,866.70 for the North Cedar Heights Area Reconstruction Project Phase 2. A motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
And seconded and open for discussion.
Yeah, I think this one is going to be overly political, but hey, that's the nature of the job we're in. This item came in at 17.5% lower than the engineering estimate. And it just, in light of Mr. Welsh's comments earlier tonight, it stuck in my craw a little bit that if we had waited on Main Street instead of paying the extra $7 to $10 million, we would have saved between $5.25 and $10.3 million based on those two percentages that came in under estimate on those last two items. So I just wanted to reference that as a lesson to us, that we need to think through these massive expenditures. And sometimes things do come back down to where they anticipate. I know, again, overly political, but the only place I can fit it in, so I figured I'd say it.
I would like to comment on the ability to have that crystal ball.
Sometimes.
To look, hindsight's always 20/20. So we do have a job to do, and that's to move things forward. You know, we could be sitting here going, hey, they went up 17%, they went up 34%. It didn't. So nonetheless, we have business to conduct, and we got to do it in a timely manner.
Any other council discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
All members voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We'll now move on to ordinances. Item number 22, pass an ordinance adopting the Code of Ordinances for the City of Cedar Falls upon its first consideration. We have a motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
Motion seconded. And any discussion? All right.
Mr. Mayor, I know this is, it
Councilman
begs the
Gilfoyle.
question to me, we do approve these every 5 years as it's referenced in here, but would it be something that we would have to ask for an overhaul for language updates and things of that nature? I'm referencing some of the things that Mr. Manning referenced earlier and some that I recall. You know, there's the language in some cases isn't updated to our standards. Do we need a referral for that update? Because it's quite lengthy.
And I think just to my understanding, this is, like you said, just a standard. We do this every 5 years. I think, are you asking for a complete look at the overall ordinances, just to look at the things that are maybe dated, that are worth updating? Or are you, any specific items in there that?
I'm more asking what is the process to make sure that we do those updates periodically before the next 5-year reapproval comes around.
Staff, any thoughts on that?
So actually, we have a list of updates that we've been looking at that we're slowly going to bring forward to council. It's probably maybe 20 different updates that we're looking at bringing forward. So, you know, a lot of it is just verbiage updates that maybe are old references or some of those things. So yes, there are a number of those updates coming forward.
Great.
And those would be brought forward just on an individual basis?
Mr. Mayor, could I
Councilman Lada?
clarify?
Yeah, I think, sorry.
Go ahead.
What I was going to say, Mayor, is just because they're in different chapters, so yes, they would probably come forward instead of trying to do a whole bunch of them at once. So.
If I could just clarify, is there a current process, policy, practice in place that we do a periodic review of those outside of the 5-year period? So it's, you know, every 2 years, this gets reviewed and submitted for any revisions, or is it just simply our every 5-year? Yes.
So actually, when was it, Kevin, that we went through a recodification where we did go through, it was probably 3 or 4 years ago that we actually went through, and maybe my timing's off there.
I think it was about a year after I got here, so that we're talking about 6 years, and that took us a year and a half. You know, there's a lot. Really, the way they come to me anyway is the people who are working in the areas that the code covers, if they see something, we talk about it, and then we compile a list.
So more just-in-time changes or as they come up?
Right.
Great, thanks.
Any other discussion from council? Otherwise, we then have a motion and a roll call vote. Public comment. Any public comment on this item? All right, seeing none, roll call vote, please.
All members voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That motion passes. Item number 23, pass an ordinance amending Chapter 23, Traffic and Motor Vehicle of the Code of Ordinances relative to the speed limit on certain portions of Center Street upon its first consideration. Do we have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
And seconded. Any discussion from council? All right, seeing none, any public comment on this item? And seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote.
All members voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That does pass for its first consideration. We'll move on to allow bills and claims. We have a motion to allow bills and claims for March 18th.
Second.
Motion and seconded, and roll call vote.
All members voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Any council updates or announcements for this evening?
Mr. Mayor.
Yep. Councilmember Cruz.
Thank you. I'd like to respond to some comments from earlier that as elected officials, we are here to scrutinize what's put before us. Open and extensive discussion is good for the topics involved, and it promotes transparency so the public can understand what's happening in front of us. You end up with a better end result because of it. So no harm, no foul. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Cruz. Any other council updates or announcements? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to council referrals. So item number 25, refer to a work session, a discussion on the future planning of the current Cedar Falls High School site and the Sartori Mercy One Hospital site. Councilmember Dunn?
Yeah, that was me.
Excuse me, we do need a motion.
Oh, so sorry.
First, motion to approve?
Motion.
And second?
Second.
Okay, open for discussion.
Okay. The reason for these referrals is I don't think any of us know the plans, but we do know there's a chance of these large areas possibly being changed in the next, who knows when, but somewhere in the future, not too far away. And I just think it would be a good idea for this body to have a open public discussion on any, you know, what might that be, or if we want any, is there any need for changes or anything like that. So basically just, I guess, a public discussion. I'm assuming maybe a work session, but I just think it's a good idea to not sit back and just wait and then all of a sudden we're behind the 8 ball. So I'd rather have a discussion on what we know, be it from council, you know, council, mayor, staff, and have a plan of if our input is needed at any point. because those are large areas in that neighborhood. And I think that unfortunately, that is not part of the downtown character district. Am I correct in thinking that? Okay. So, you know, like, for instance, is that an area where what will do, is the current code and zoning supportive of things that, you know, are wanted in 2024, 25, or maybe there's no need for change, but I thought we should have a public discussion on that.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Schultz.
I agree with Ms. Dunn that we need to discuss this. I would suggest that we separate the two into two different, being that they're close in proximity, but you know, maybe there's a different functional use for reuse or repurpose. Maybe some similarities for sure, but
I'm okay with however the discussion is best, you know, how staff or all of our, you know, staff time, our time, community's time is best utilized, however that, and we don't know what those entities, I mean, there's not a definite plan. It's just that I think it's a good idea for us to at least have something to start out with.
And Director Sheets, could you just speak quick to the zoning of that area and kind of, I know we had it on a timeline of when we wanted to look at addressing that we talked about at goal setting.
Sure. The high school site is zoned R1, so that's our most restrictive residential neighborhood. And the Sartori site is zoned R3, so it allows a little bit more expanded use as you see happening there. The distinction, I can send an email to the council members of what permitted uses are in the R1 versus the R3 if you would like that, or that can be covered in a work session if that's what you're looking for, just some basic information that way. As far as timeline, in our capital improvement plan, we have several areas of vision planning and zoning work. College Hill was the first of several. Well, downtown was first and then College Hill. But the high school Sartori Hospital area we have in our current planning for funding in fiscal 26 and 27. So we wanted to get College Hill underway, then start with the next one. And then we have University Avenue also identified in the CIP.
And so then I think, if I can paraphrase for you, we'll be looking at essentially a work session to get some feedback on what the current zoning is, what we're looking at for what we want to use that area for, because I know we've discussed public input. Does it sound like a work session is what, Councilmember Latha?
I think we're looking at 2 work sessions, if I heard correctly, though, correct?
And it could be, those are covered as 2 separate conversations at one time, but just depending on what you guys are looking for.
Sure, I'm okay with either, you know, if
yeah, they can certainly happen, like Kelly was talking about, but from maybe just being in town, I think the high school is going to come open sooner than, hopefully sooner than the hospital, but to have a little bit of a plan in place for that location, or have some discussions around that, but certainly the hospital is the other. But that's been hanging out there for a decade, so.
I'm okay with it in my, whatever is the healthiest way to have, you know, my thought is they are, even though they're separate, I agree, they could be different parts of the same work session or not, but I'm thinking like they are kind of in the same neighborhood, so we would, to me, it makes sense to have it maybe 2 separate discussions in the same work session, but I'm open to whatever you guys, I mean, whatever is the healthiest, most efficient way to go about it.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Canfield?
I think on this one, for clarification, a work session does not provide opportunity for public input, whereas a committee of the whole meeting does, so that we would have that opportunity for discourse. If that's what's desired, that's the venue. Secondarily, I don't think this is within our jurisdiction to be planning what is going to be done with those sites currently. I mean, in my mind, it'd be akin to saying, what does this city council want to do with Dustin Canfield's house, should he sell it someday? We don't own this property. So I don't know that that's the right way to plan this. Third question then, I guess, for Stephanie and team is, I know this is a little bit behind the 8 ball in some people's timelines, but does this jump the gun on those future sessions that you're planning to have an overall holistic zoning approach to those districts?
Well, I think what we saw, I'll answer it more with what we did tonight here when we talked about the College Hill plan. We talked about what is the council's interest in the areas to look at so that we could properly craft a selection process for a consultant and be heading down the right path. So I think a discussion could help from that perspective as to what council might be looking for. But right, you probably want to be careful. You don't want to drive that too much because you want to have then the community input process that a visioning process would have. And that visioning process we're thinking is a little bit larger. It's not just the high school site, it's the surrounding neighborhoods as we try to look at all of our neighborhoods in Cedar Falls and update our zoning accordingly.
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead.
Councilman Hallbaker.
Okay, thank you. I may not say this often, but I'm going to agree with Councilman Danfield. As I understand it, that Ms. Dunn, on one issue, there's planning, and that's the zoning decisions, and that's already in the CIP, and it's part of the progression of looking at the zoning changes throughout the city in those development areas. And then I hear a little bit to the points that were made earlier, talking about the specific use of the property, and I tend to agree that that's not something that we can weigh in, except as it relates to falling within zoning ordinances. So
I think, Mr. Mayor, I think I maybe am not coming off correctly. I'm not trying to come up with an exact plan. I know those aren't our properties. I'm just trying to start a conversation because at some point, maybe they won't, maybe those entities will continue on there and it won't even be any of our business. But my thought is in the event that there are spaces that will be redeveloped, should we have a conversation? And I guess, you know what, I'm okay with whatever this body, I just felt that I wanted to bring that up because I don't want us to be, again, behind the times. So if we're comfortable just carrying on, I'm comfortable with that. But that was a thought in my mind that these areas could be open for redevelopment, and maybe that was a conversation we should have sooner than later. Nothing to nail down anything, or I guess maybe kind of brainstorming, or maybe us learning, like Director Sheets said, what is even possible right now if something was there. So but I'm okay if this body does not want to have that conversation. I'm totally fine with that.
Mr. Mayor, a question for Mr. Gaines. We have some ownership of Sartori property, correct?
Yeah.
So we do have.
That's what I was just going to.
An interest.
That's what I was just going to kind of clarify. So obviously the school site is owned by the school district, and they're going to be vacating. My understanding is this coming fall to start classes at the new high school. But then the Sartori site, my understanding is there's no plans right now for the new hospital, but the city does own that site. So once that's vacated and the lease is terminated, then yes, this body would have control over that site.
So to Ms. Dunn's point, I think it's nice to have the conversation ahead of time and at least have some rough ideas, if nothing else, about this.
Well, and to speak quickly on the high school site, there is some value, since we are R1 right there right now, that is the most restrictive zoning. So there might be some value of just knowing ahead of time how much are we willing to loosen that up, depending on what's planned to go there, because right now it is pretty restrictive. So there may be some value in that, just looking at, so that developers in the future kind of know what's even in the realm of possibility going forward there.
Mayor.
Councilman Cruz.
Thank you. I guess to coin a phrase, I think we're putting the cart ahead of the horse a little bit, particularly with the school grounds. We said we don't own it, but there's legislation being debated in Des Moines right now that's moving forward that will significantly affect what could be done with the property and how it could be marketed and that sort of thing. So I think we should let that play itself out, and we don't have that much longer for the current legislative session to finish. That I think I would kind of table this thought for a couple months at least.
Any other
Mr. Mayor, just offering a compromise. Thank you. Would it be wise, Kelly, to have the conversation about the hospital site and then leave the district discussion at the larger level to the future visioning discussions that we've already got planned? Would that be a happy medium for now?
Like I said, whatever this body is comfortable with. I just didn't want to be behind the times.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I love opportunities to learn, even if it's just like about what would be possible in that site now. I understand that that's a conversation we can each have when we meet with staff, but sometimes it's good for public conversation so that the citizens have an opportunity, if they wish, to tune in and just kind of hear it instead of trying to read through code. So, but if that's the way this body wishes to go, I just wanted to bring up the opportunity to have the conversation about possibly digging into it a little bit.
So right now, we've got a motion to look at referring to a work session discussion on both the sites. You kind of alluded to looking at I think a friendly recommendation to change that, amend that to be just the one site.
Mr. Mayor,
It's like, did you have some, Councilman Latta?
also a conversation on whether or not that should be a committee meeting if we're looking for public comment or not.
Mhm.
So I don't know if we're looking at work session or committee meeting.
Committee.
I guess, Mr. Mayor, for clarification on that, if it were a work session, would staff have something to present for us to discuss internally for, let's say, the hospital site for now? Or would it be best to wait for that future discussion that's already slated, albeit 2 years out?
We can have information ready, depending on what the council wants to talk about, options, compare it to what the future land use map would propose on there, and then also talk about different options that could be. But yeah, I think there's this would just be an initial conversation. Maybe what we would also do is lay out a plan for as we get there. FY26 would start July 1 of 25, so that date's slowly creeping up on us.
So I guess I'd be in agreement with Kelly that we do need to have a conversation about that. I would move to amend by removing the Cedar Falls High School site and just refer that discussion on future planning at a work session of the current Sartori Morrissey 1 hospital sites. That's an official amendment, if you.
So that's been motion amended. Is there a second?
Repeat that again.
Just to amend that referral to refer to work session, a discussion on the future planning of the current Sartori Morrissey 1 hospital site.
So taking away the school portion of it.
Yeah.
So that's a motion to amend. There's a second. All right, seeing no second, we'll go back to the original motion, then to look at referring discussion on the high school site and the Mercy 1 site. It sounds like, if I'm just going to rephrase the consensus, it would be just to get more information from staff on where we're at with those sites, future land uses of those potentially, to probably have a more substantive conversation at a later date on what we're looking to do with those sites. My feeling is that would be a work session, which is just kind of us getting some updated information. That's been motion second. Any more discussion?
Mr. Mayor, I guess I thought there was pretty good input on a committee meeting so that we'd get public input.
Well, that's why I just clarified that. I think it sounds like we're looking.
I mean, I think we're ahead of the horse, the whole thing here.
Mr. Mayor, I think that there is some validity in having the conversation now so that we can better understand what those different designations mean and what it would look like to change them. And I think to ask for public input at this point would really be putting the cart before the horse, because we're not doing anything with them at this point, nor is there really any potential to do anything with them. So I think just to have the information is valuable, and we can do that in a work session, and then we can leave it for the future as slated.
Mr. Mayor, if I may. With the understanding that this is an informational session from staff on both of those issues, I'm in agreement with that, and the motion on the floor is for referring it to the work session. And if we want to have a committee as a whole later on the same issue, we can do so. So I'm in favor of the motion as it stands.
All right, so motion second. Any more conversation? And it's as written for the motion, as an informational meeting.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
The last
Yeah, Bill.
push I would give to this is there's a mechanism for which to be used in these instances where we might be discussing property in an executive session. Open dialogue at a work session that lays out our intentions, such as that a developer could get wind of what we intend to do with it, would racket the price, potentially change the price on properties we have no jurisdiction over. I don't think it's wise, and I guess I'd ask Kevin to weigh in if he has any input at this juncture. I don't think it's wise for us to discuss what we want to do with property we don't own yet, in any fashion.
Is that okay, Mayor? Two responses. I don't know that there's any idea that the city would ever own that site, but that doesn't mean that council is restricted from rezoning any piece of property anywhere on assumption of future development. So I don't think that's a problem. Of course, as has been stated, the city does own the other site. Although, contrary-wise, we're in a long-term lease with that right now, so that we're stuck with that for a while anyway. So.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to stress again, this is not, I didn't have any intention of diving into the weeds, as we say. I just wanted to, I guess, have a moment where we all realize, first of all, that these could be things coming down the way, and have a discussion of what we've got in place now, and just kind of be prepared for what might come in the future.
And I'll take the motion then with two, just timing-wise, just assuming it's whenever it seems relevant, fits in council calendar, that conversation as an informational meeting.
Yep.
There's a motion seconded. Any further conversation? There's a voice vote. So all those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Get that?
Can we show of hands, please?
So all those in favor, show of hands. And all those opposed? That motion carries. So now move on to item number 26, refer to work session or committee of the whole discussion of the future land use map, resilience plan, and floodplain maps regarding future development planning and how we're addressing potential impacts on our waterways, especially Dry Run Creek and its watershed. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
And the second?
Second.
So motion seconded, so open for conversation. Quick for my end, just kind of knowing what we just had on the previous conversation, I think this is just looking at more of an informational gathering meeting to discuss some of the waterways and the impacts and what is our current practice around protecting the waterways within our development. Councilmember Dunn, did you want to elaborate at all?
Yes, I agree. That is the intention. I did, though, want to, because we've said regarding the resilience plan, if there's ever something to pull, we could just pull it. So the resilience plan, it speaks of blue-green corridor, and it talks about stormwater management and green spaces and I guess development. So I just want to make sure that as that carries, as the work for this committee of the whole, I guess is what I asked for, that we also, if we can look at that document and see if there's anything in that document that was worked on and recommended that we may consider in order to implement and do better. And this one I think is also because because I think there was concern. We've had several areas in town recently where I've heard, and I think other people have heard concern. So I think it's an opportunity to have a discussion of where we're at, and is this still to the standards that, obviously that are allowed by law, but that this body feels is what our community and citizens want? And is there an area where we can pull any of these recommendations in that document from the resilience plan to do better, protect our waterway?
Mr. Mayor.
Yep, Councilmember Cruz.
If something like this could be used to incorporate recreational areas and parks into our development code, I think it'd be a good idea, because we seem to run into situations where as developments are being developed, there's a lacking of green space, and that affects the quality of life for the people in that development. And I know it's been said by staff that our developing code needs some revisions in that regard for park space. And I mean, wetlands or floodplains can be a park real easily and doesn't affect the infrastructure that might be there, or, jungle gym, well, we can't do jungle gyms, but whatever's legal for recreational equipment these days.
Director Sheets, can you just speak to quick, are we planning to talk, I know we've talked in the past about updating our development code for the parks requirements and things as part of the parks master plan. Is that something that's a separate conversation we're already planning on?
Correct. Yes, and we did a presentation to council within the last 6 months, I think, about our park requirements and how we've handled that as information as we were moving into the park master plan. So we're working on that request for proposals and qualifications so that we can try to move forward with that project.
So then,
I'm sorry.
So would that cover what you were thinking, is that might be a separate conversation?
Well, it sounds like the floodplain areas would double as recreation areas. I mean, soccer fields, ball diamonds, what have you.
Mr. Mayor, that wasn't the intention of my referral. My referral was to specifically concentrate on soil, waterway, not that I don't love those things that you're talking about, Councilman Cruz, but that's not the intention of this referral. It was to stick with water quality and making sure that we are being intentional and being the best that we can in our watershed.
Mr. Mayor, may I?
Councilman Hallbaker.
So, Councilmember Dunn, so work session, you think, for the same reason, or are you thinking more of a committee as a whole?
Sometimes I think at this time, since we're not really doing I wouldn't think we're doing an action. I'm okay with a work session.
Okay.
A little less formal.
Mm-hmm.
We can always move on to something more formal if we need to.
And I would take it as, from talking to staff a little bit, we'd look at providing an update on just our overall, all the items you mentioned here, floodplain maps, the resiliency plan, especially of just specific items in there relevant to our waterways and our floodplain and how we're managing the watershed.
Yeah, I just hear as our city grows, a common thing that I've heard in the last 4 years is, and people know we need housing. They just want a smart, they want to make sure we're caring for our watershed and our water quality and our soil the best we can. And we do have this, what I'll call a tool in the resilience plan that we have not adopted. And I just would love the opportunity to learn what we have in place now and see if there's any place we can do better.
Okay. Any other council discussion? So otherwise, I'll plan to look at that as sounds like a work session. Staff would be able to just provide some additional information on what we're currently doing for protecting waterways, river, watershed, and then as a work session so we can just kind of get some council shared understanding on that topic.
I would love that.
Okay, let's see any other conversation. We have a motion second. All those in favor? Say
aye.
Aye. All opposed? The motion carries. All right, and we'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, thank you, everyone.